white thread or gray?
It's a gray thread. It kind of showed up. It shows a little lighter because of the Darlon underneath it. It shows up a little bit lighter. Okay, before things get away from us, I better tie a 32 as promised. I don't think I'm too shaky. Okay. And this 32 I'm going to tie is actually an imitation of a natural we get. It's just a little smaller. It's green machine kind of tiny little midge. Let's see if I can find it. And I'm going to tie it on the only 32 hook I know of that was around now was a Tiemco that they don't make anymore. You can still find them, but they really got bought up. I want to make sure I got, it's a 518. And the reason I like this is it's the only small hook, really small hook I could find with a straight shank. Because a lot of the small hooks now have curved shanks. And this is, I'm going to use two different colored threads on this fly. And the only reason I'm using a thread for the body of the fly is because it matched the natural more closely than anything else I could find. You can dub this small pretty easy. Some of our dubbing materials. The main reason I tie this fly is so that there was a time when our materials just weren't good enough and fine enough for me to tie a fly like this. And there's so many materials available now that these smaller flies are not that much of a problem. At least in terms of material, you're just trying to find something where you don't have much bulk, very little bulk. The thing to watch out for is you got to. There's a hook in there. You see that? It's a small one. Okay.
You might have to magnify a little bit more, Ken.
You've got to be careful you don't inhale this.
Yeah, you gotta see.
Okay. I'm being careful here because with a Regal vise, if you pop this thing off, it can get, you can end up with it in your eye. And I actually had a guy tell me, he said, I have floaters in my eye that's bigger than this fly that you're tying. Okay, I'm going to use a chartreuse thread for the body on this thing. This is Gudbrand 10-aught, which I talked about yesterday, which I like quite a bit. It's a little flossier than the Beavis that's available now. But you'll see the number of wraps I can get with it to form the body. The thing you watch out for on the ultra small stuff is if I hit the hook point with this at all, I just unwrap it and start all over because it'll fray and it'll just be a mess. Starting close to the middle of the hook, and I just start this thing off, and I don't rip it back like I do on other flies. Now I build a nice taper.
Yeah, sure did. Taper pretty nice.
Oops. Okay, I got to go over again. I just frayed that slightly, and that'll get me into trouble later. Better to deal with it now. I hit the point. No big deal. And I've actually caught fish on this thing, not massive fish. Although when I was in the guide business, I had a client who wanted to try to catch a fish on one of these, and she caught, it was maybe a 14-inch rainbow trout. And the trouble with these things is getting a real positive hookup. But if you hook a trout in the mouth where it's in the bone, it's not going to come out because it doesn't have any kind of shank to lever against. It's just a matter of you paying attention and not getting broke off, because you're fishing this on 8X. A lot of people tie the tippet section on before they go to the river, and then they just blood knot that tippet to their leader. Okay. Make sure that you get that taper. Look at how many wraps I'm getting, though. It's pretty amazing with this kind of thread.
Ken, can you adjust the focus on that?
Some of your beard, it might be just...
Or get Ed to dye his beard.
Same color as your beard.
Is it?
Yep, so we can't see it.
Well, that's because I was leaning. Well, there you go.
It's got a focus there.
You're looking pretty good shape.
Well. Something that small.
Oh, yeah, you got it.
Use a penny.
It's gonna pop in and out of focus.
Yeah, it just goes...
This stuff is different.
Yeah, it's this, when you get into the small stuff, the cameras, that tends to happen. So I'm gonna finish this off. I'm done with the body, and I'm gonna switch to a black thread. And this actually looks like the real insect has that bright chartreuse body and a black head. So I'll tie this in.
Split wings?
Possibly. I didn't bring the stuff for the coachman. You can tie a royal coachman, and I do it, and the hardest problem I had was finding a wing material. And I ended up using white biot, goose biot, and splitting it, and it was stiff enough that I could use it. Okay, so I've kind of got this on. Question is, I want to have a down wing, sort of tan down wing. How am I going to deal with that? I mean, it's not like an elk hair caddis. I could take like one deer hair, and that'd be as much as I could get on this. So you think about, well, what materials, what's available, what would work? And the thing that came to mind was CDC. It's a perfect material, it's compressible, it's visible, so that when you actually fish this thing, it'll work. And there's another characteristic of this stuff, which is, see those square ends? You're not going to have to worry about straightening anything. You got a nice square end. All you do is you take the material, sort of smooth it back this way. You got a nice square end to it. Can press it down, get this stuff out of the way, and then I'm just going to make a nice loose loop and pull it through. Pull it through to size. That's pretty good. And then once again, I don't want to get this stuff in the eye. Oops. I don't know what happened there, but I didn't like the sound. So I trim I wrap in front of it, and now I can trim it off. That wasn't as good as some I've done, but I think I'll keep the eye open. And now, this is amazingly visible on the water, but why not just hackle it for the heck of it? Because you can get size 32 hackle pretty easily off any of these genetic necks that you find. It's amazing that it's available. I got a bunch of it. I usually I've traded people those massive size 16 feathers for the 32s on their necks. You know, I don't know what to do with something like that. And this stuff basically looks like a hair, but look at the length on it. It's pretty amazing. You get several flies out of it. The hardest part is stripping a little bit of material off at the base so you can get it on the hook. strip that. That's ready to go. Now, one of the things that'll happen is you don't get allowed a whole lot of wraps to tie this hackle in. And if you happen to just pull the hackle out because you didn't have enough wraps, when you go to tie it in again, remember to unwrap the wraps that you did, because you're going to keep building that head up if you don't do that. Still getting my beard? Okay, now I find my hat. And this is the part where things can go bad. Not really. Watch the hook point and don't take that one extra wrap, which I always seem to want to do. Take one additional wrap of hackle. But I'm going to settle for 3, which might have been one too many. Maybe not. I'm jockeying to get the light. Silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to get an extra wrap around there before I said anything. This one's pretty good. I've got a few stray hackle fibers, which I think I'll be able to trim off. Okay. Got a few of these in here. And like I said, this thing, if you get the light right and you pick the fish, I mean, I don't try to catch big, huge fish on this because you won't land them. But if I get the light right where I can see that CDC up in the water and I can get within 15 feet of this thing, I can usually catch them. I'm going to send it around too, but you should.
I'm just going to put this on here. I was going to use a quarter at first. It's a little, yeah, smaller than the moose's head here. And here it is with a dime.
Pretty small.
Big as a boat.
I see a flaw there.
So what's the biggest fish you've caught in that?
Biggest one I've caught on, it's 10 or 11 inches, but I had a client who caught a 14-inch rainbow trout. What happens is I pick my fish, I set myself up, or I go on a small stream where the fish are just little. It's kind of an affectation, but it's fun. Over in Britain, the Irish are really into this small stuff on their small streams. They're way ahead of us on small flies now, interestingly enough, because they weren't for a long time, but they really have gotten into this stuff. Get these 32s and smaller.
Where, 64?